Hello, it's been a while. My name is David McGregor, and I am doing this series on the outdoors. I'm going to take a short break to switch this over and change this up a little bit. I've had a lot of comments while I've been gone, and you'll have to excuse me for that. My health has not been good. My hip is starting to go out. My back shot. Last time we talked, there'd been the shooting over the hill, and well, a lot of things have interrupted. I was in the middle of a lawsuit, not about any of this, but medical bills, which I won, thankfully. So jumping in that, again, you'll notice that I'm wearing a utility kilt. I was dared to a few months ago, and wearing a kilt during formal functions is not a big deal for me. It's something that I've always done. It's part of my heritage. But using it in the outdoors was something that I was challenged to do. And I started this spring and then really just jumped in on it. The freedom of movement, the comfort, and the breathability is fantastic. So from now on during the summer months, I think this is what you're going to be seeing me in, is going to be the utility kilts. I love the pocket space in them. Lots and lots of pocket space. Tommy, thank you. You were right. I should have jumped into it and not worried so much about what people thought. But jumping off of that, again, thanks, Tommy. You were right. We're going to jump into blades. This is a question that's been jumping out at me and everything else. You'll notice one is in the middle of fabrication right here. This was a knife from Falcon Knives in Alaska that I had asked to be built, and then he decided he couldn't do the handles. And when he sent me the knife, there was all sorts of issues with it. Well, when he sent me what he'd done, which was just the blade portion. Originally, he had a whale's tail on it so I could yank it out of things easier, which didn't make any sense to me. It's a cutting knife. It isn't a dagger. I'm not plunging it into something, but I'm in the middle of putting the whitetail antler from a whitetail that I hunted onto it so I can use it. It's been sitting on my desk for a while because the other CPM 3V knife that I'd ordered custom from Bark River Knives and then had it customized, it's a B2, got destroyed. It fell off of my, fell out of the sheath on the mower and went under the mower deck, and it hit 3 times. And that 3 times, as you can see, obliterated the knife. I've never seen CPM 3 just shatter like that. The other 2 pieces of the upper end of the blade went shooting off into the grass. I don't know where. But I did see it come out in 2 pieces. 2 additional pieces besides this. CPM 3 is supposed to be extremely impact resistant, and the blades on the mower are mild steel, and they just utterly obliterated it. I expected the handles to be destroyed and some dents and nicks that were going to have to be ground out of it, but instead it ended up obliterating the knife. I did have a bunch of issues with it, and we'll get into those later as we discuss more about the blades that you see here. We have an assortment of knives. This is by no means the complete collection. This is just a representative collection here of blades used in the outdoors commonly, and chopping instruments used. Some common, some uncommon, some very cheap, some very expensive. There's a nice selection here, and we're going to get into them as we go. One of the major questions is always outdoors knives. And with outdoors knives, there's clears yeses and nos, and then there's the skill level and financial level. Okay? So let's start with the yeses and nos. Okay? A general purpose outdoors knife is going to be a knife that does the majority of the tasks that you need around camp. All right. And for that, you know, most of these blades would do. The CRKT folder here would do well for that. Any of these knives here and the Mora knife and the Cold Steel are all good utility knives that'll do the majority of everything. What else you have here is on this side you have 2 combat knives. I didn't bring the Bowies out. My sons have a couple of Bowies. I always berated them for buying the Bowies. A Bowie knife has no real place in the outdoors. I hear a lot of people talk about batoning, and because of its size, it's good for batoning, it's good for chopping, it's good for stabbing. It's not. It really isn't. And if you're using your knife to baton anything other than small stuff, you are not using your knife correctly. And you're really using the wrong tool for the job, because batoning has nothing to do about making kindling or shims, unless you're doing fine carved shims for projects, traps, stuff like that, real fine, real small. And for that, you don't need a massive monster that's 1/4 inch thick of CPM 3V or Magna Cut or any of the other super steels, or, you know, 3 inches of D2. Instead, the most common knife you're going to want is going to be about 5/16 of an inch wide. This one is CPM 3V. This one's stainless. This one is D2. 3 of the blades here are custom built for me, and we'll get into those. This is actually a real Soligen butcher knife, and this is a modified form of this. Is what all the mountain men actually carried, not the Bowies and the giant fighting knives and everything that you saw. In fact, a modified Bowie knife is this Primos here. This is stainless steel. This is a semi-modern knife made by Schrade under the Primos line. But this design is actually based off of Kit Carson's knife. My grandfather had a similar knife that was given to him by a friend of his whose grandfather was a mountain man. And instead of having the bow in the back of it, it was a straight across, then had the 12 degree down and had the nice spay front end on it, which made it excellent for skinning, processing game, and processing food in camp. It also made it with the nice long blade, a beautiful slight rope cutter and trimmer, and gave you a lot of room when you were carving up and down the blade before you needed to sharpen. Modern steels have eliminated that. Like the D2 holds an edge extremely well. The CPM 3, once you get it sharpened, holds edge fantastically, is a super steel. Probably one of the best steels for the outdoors that you can get. The only downside to it is its corrosion resistance. It does need to be wiped down with a little bit of oil and wax. But these are all expensive, and like I said, this is a custom that I had made, and I was hoping to have the CPM 3 similar. I just wanted it bigger because this is a little small for what I use it for, hunting big game. This tops out at deer, but I do hunt elk, bear, and some other bigger stuff, and this is a little bit small for that, which is what I was using this for, but I never really liked this one. So the heartbreaking part is the money that I spent on this Bark River. I spent $380 to buy it, and then another $120 to have it shaped the way I wanted it. I am not convinced I'm going to have this taken, but I'm not convinced that it actually was CPM 3V. I kind of think they ripped me off. I know that they've closed now because of other issues, but that was a different line. That was the B2 line. But I don't think that it actually was, because like I said, a mild steel blade on a mower was completely undamaged. by it striking it, and it obliterated the CPM, or the supposed CPM 3V. Getting back to the knife design here, what we've got is this would be, these two are typical of fighting knives. And one, we have the classic K-bar. This was issued to me in '93 by the Navy. And you can see when I was stationed with the Marines, we sharpened the backs of them. So instead of the false blade on the back, it became a real blade on the back. And this was given to me from 1st Infantry Division when I was with them. Yeah, and we did that. But if you look at the profiles on both, you'll see the geometry changes and how it thins from back here all the way up. And you see that same profile change here, going all the way up to where it gets thinner and thinner. These are stabbing and fighting blades. These are for slashing and stabbing. They call this a field utility knife, and yes, the utility of cutting ropes is in it with the serrations. Sorry, TBIs. But neither of these is actually a good field knife. I have had this for years, but I wouldn't. It's absolute. Both of these are pretty much worthless in caping or skinning game appropriately. They're not something I would use around camp. They're not something I would use to butcher or break down game or to harvest plants, mushrooms, stuff like that. That's where you get these. And this would be the truest individual version of a hunting knife. And this is a hen and rooster from Spain with HR 5003 steel. And we can see this is roughly based on the Puma White Hunter. And this is great with the great bow here for skinning and caping. It's got the nice blade here. Part of the problems with this on the control surfaces, though, when you're dealing with like kitchen and fishing and stuff, is this great differential here on the blade and being able to lay flat and get up on cutting boards and get into bones and stuff. This actually acts as a hindrance. So for the fine removal of meat and tissues, you know, in between the vertebrae and then the knuckles and stuff, this becomes problematic. Although it is great for quartering and basic breakdown, it isn't good for the finer detail. Just because of this, and you don't have a straight line going from here to here. But this would be an archetypical hunting knife, a real hunting knife, not a survival knife or a fighting knife classified as a hunting knife. As far as survival knives, you won't see any of that in my collection, at least what you call the archetypical survival knife. And there is a distinct reason for that. There isn't a survival knife made today that is actually a survival knife. For me, a survival knife needs to meet the criteria of being the most useful knife for all the general purposes of camp and survival that you would need. That would mean the cutting of leather and fabric, the caping of an animal, the fine butchering of an animal, the removal of the majority of tissues and stuff like that. And that's where you come to the butcher knife style designs like this 1933 Sologren butcher knife, which is, I think, almost a 275-year-old blade design for butchering. Actually, it's older than that. It's from the 1700s anyway. This rough design for butchering meat. And like I said, the mountain men that went into the Rockies and stuff found that the majority of this profile was great, but they didn't like the upsweep of it. It didn't carry as well, and it didn't do general in-house practices as well. So a lot of them modified the designs, like Kit Carson and J.P. McKay, whose grandson gave my grandfather a knife similar in design to this, just a little bit longer and a little bit broader. And that's what I was trying to recreate with the Bark River Custom and this Falcon River Falcon knives from Alaska. Didn't quite get it. This one was done by a gentleman in Belarus, and he did a really nice job with the profiles and stuff. He did make it a little too narrow and not quite long enough for me. I really wanted it to be about this long right here to fit my purposes a little bit better. But these would be more what I would consider a survival knife. They cut leather for clothing and stuff fantastically well. They carve, they cut, they're precise in their notches. They have long strokes for cutting cordage. Long wear on the blades. They get into the meat and carve down and break down muscle extremely well. They're good for fishing, hunting, meal prep, and they're good for harvesting plant matter. Expensive though, and more focused to the general outdoorsman who spends a lot of time in the outdoors, willing to invest in it. Does live off the land for the most part. Are they perfect for do-it-all everything? No, they're not. If I'm doing big game hunting and doing full harvest, then I usually use a combination. It would usually be one of these right here, the Natuska and the Victorinox boning knife. The Victorinox boning knife also acts as a fillet knife in some situations for me. In smaller situations, if I'm fishing salmon, then I use one of the 10-inch fillet knives to assist with that. But to me, when you say survival knife, it means that you're going with just one blade and you need one blade that does almost everything decently. It doesn't have to be an expert at it. In fact, it's a generalist, but it's very good at being a generalist. And that would be these blades here. Right here. If your primary focus is hunting and game gathering and general processing before you take it to a processor, you take it home to finish breakdown. The general hunting knives like the Puma Great White Hunter, this Hen and Rooster, this is my wife's. This has been a fantastic knife for her over the years. She's had this knife for 27 years. But if you're the general camping and general outdoors, you know, you're a hiker, you're a backpacker, you're not focused on a lot of hunting, you do a little bit of small game hunting here or there, or you're just generally in camp and stuff, the Cold Steel here is about perfect. If you're in the Boy Scouts or something along those lines, again, this is about perfect right here. And the legend of that is the Mora knife. The difference between the Cold Steel and the Mora are going to be the grinds. This is a straight V grind on the Cold Steel. And then the Mora has the traditional Mora grind right here. And these two knives are very hard to beat in the general category for anybody that is just a hobbyist outdoorsman. I mean, if you're backpacking, you're going to prep some packaged meals and stuff like that. You might occasionally do a little bit of light hunting. You're a Boy Scout. These are about perfect. And why would I include the Boy Scout? Well, the Scouts now. There's no more Boy Scouts. They're just Scouts. Why would I say these are better when they've got the folding knife choices? Because most of you are used to seeing them carrying folding knives, such as the CRKT and this. Scouting says that the straight knives, the fixed blades, are more dangerous, and that is actually not true. These knives are actually much more dangerous for a child or a young adult to use. And the reasons for that is simple. With the Victorinox, which we associate with a lot of Boy Scouts and little adventures and stuff, although this is a mini, this is representative of all Victorinox. You see if it gets bumped where you flex it, it snaps closed and it will take your finger off or slice a nice gouge in it. The same with the lockbacks. The lockbacks are not as untrustworthy doing it because of the locking equipment. This has a liner lock. You have the swing locks, which are probably the safest of the locking knives. They have a switch right here along the side and you can fold it over. The lockbacks are a little bit less safe because you're snapping right here, you're pushing right here and starting to push the blade closed. And this, you're putting your whole hand here and getting it to swing and let go. You notice this one has the swing to swing it open, but a lot of them don't have that. A lot of them, when you get here, will just snap closed on the hands. And if you're a child that's in a hurry and you don't do this and you don't move your finger, or you leave the meaty part of your hand right here, you'll snap it right across here, or you'll snap it across your fingers. Where with a fixed blade, you don't have to worry about that. We'll just use this as an example. Now, the Mora knife and the Cold Steel have some nice features. As we see, if this is on your belt, you're just straight drawing and you're putting it right back in, and it doesn't just fall out. It stays where you want it. You got flipped upside down. You have to give it some positive, and you really have to wail on it to get this blade to come out. See that? Don't do that at home. It's not good for your blades. I do have replacements for this, and there is nobody out here. I'm on my gun range and my bow range, so I'm perfectly safe. There's nobody around, so I can do a little bit more of the unsavory things with the blades in more safety, and the only risk is me. But for general safety purpose, general carry purposes, to somebody new getting into it, the fixed blade knives are the much safer way to go. And really, for the money, the Mora knife is legendary. This one is a stainless steel. I give it, a 6 out of 10 as a beginner's knife. It doesn't require a lot of maintenance to keep it clean. Easy to wash, after you're done cooking and stuff. So it's a fairly sanitary knife, especially transitioning between things and giving it a quick wash. Using some basic soaps and stuff, it stays relatively clean. It's hard for it to rust. However, if you're going to get more serious into the outdoors, I would suggest getting the high carbon knives instead of just the plain stainless. They take a edge sharper and hold it longer. But with them comes the more technical expertise of having to keep it not just clean, but oiled and waxed. And that's part of the basic care of it. But really, for a beginner or an intermediate level, Mora knife or this Cold Steel of similar design really cannot be beat. Right now, this guy's running about $25 on average. And Mora has a legendary reputation. This was generally made as a fishing knife and game knife. Mora makes a more general purpose knife that is about 1 inch longer, carbon steel, and then the price really starts to go up a bit for them, but they are well worth it and they will grow with you. Fantastic blades, legendary knives for beginners and for those that are generalists in the outdoors. The cold steel, I also recommend. I've let my kids and stuff use it. I loaned this one out. It has been a really good knife. And really, if I wasn't into, more advanced outdoors, I would probably still be carrying a Mora knife. This is my EDC. I like this for everyday carry, but like I said, for young children and people starting out, it's a more technical knife. That's all I'll use. And then you get the Natuska, which is a combination Eula chopper. This really gets used for processing. It's great for heavy kitchen work for a lot. It's great for making jerky, making small slices on meat, stuff like that. It is not great for fine work, but it does take a lot of the energy out of heavy work. It does act as a butcher knife and a chopper, when you're in the field. And this one is 20 years old. They don't make it anymore. If you find it, snatch it up. I highly encourage you to snatch it up. I've given all my kids one, and I'm just trying to find a couple more to put in my collection. Not because I think this is going to wear out, but because 2 is 1 and 1 is none. And if something ever were to happen to it, I would like a replacement. It really was heartbreaking to see them do away with this and retire this. I like Benchmades, but Benchmades are notoriously expensive. Good knives, yes. Are they worth that? Usually, no. The Natuska is out there enough and fills enough of a niche that I made the exception to go ahead and spend all the extra money on it, as adverse to, say, one of their folding knives or one of their straight blades. Benchmade is a great knife company, just expensive, more expensive than they really need to be. So it really is, as I've learned here recently, especially with the Bark River, name isn't everything. Reputation has a lot to do with it. And, when you cheat, this can get you killed. If I'd been in the field and this had happened, this would be a devastating loss. So, be sure you're getting what you paid for, and you know what you're paying for and what you're buying. This was disheartening, and this was disheartening. Like I said, this was made by Falcon Knives out of Alaska for me, and I sent him the antler, and he sent it back saying he couldn't make that work. He wanted to just use wood or something. And I said, no, I had a particular purpose. And the other thing is, I sent him the design in drawing to match this, just ranged up to what I wanted. And this is what he sent back. And originally he had a whale's tail on the back. But there's a problem, because in our negotiations, he asked me if I wanted this to be Scandi ground, like the Mora knife, or something else, and if Scandi would be all right. And I said, sure, Scandi would be fine. But what ended up happening is, if you see one side, you get Scandi here, and then it widens out to something else, almost to V. And on the back side here, we have a V grind. See that right there? So we go from Scandi on one side, V grind on the other. You see where my finger is here? Now, if we take that and we flip it to this side, look at the difference on where the bevel is. So the blade is completely uneven, and once this wears, and it's CPM 3V, it should take a time to wear. But as you can see, this one's still in manufacture. I've already made it up the handles. I did have it sitting on the desk because I wasn't going to waste my time with it. But since that broke 2 days ago, I've been working on this, and we're just starting to get there. That's why the bolts are in it. They'll come out and 1/4-inch pins will go in and she'll be glued. We're going to thin this out just a little bit down here. Bring this down just a touch. But that's one project knife, and to get what I really want, I think I'm going to have to do it myself. Like I said, the one custom knife here that I really did like and was pretty much spot on was done by a gentleman for me in Belarus. The back angle here is a little too high. You need to be just a touch lower. But the rest of the blade is pretty much spot on except for the handles, which he used micarta. And as you'll notice, I absolutely abhor micarta. When it gets wet or when it gets blood on it, it becomes slick. Or when you've got fish on you, fish slime, this thing just slides back and forth in your hand. And that does drive me up a wall. It's incredibly dangerous. Been a great knife otherwise. It cuts very well. It's durable. It holds an edge forever. So for the most part, you know, other than the grip on it and that back grind, it's a bit annoying. The back grind is kept at 12 degrees for a reason. So when I'm skinning, I can set it on the breastbone and push, and it acts like a zipper without digging into the tissue and rupturing organs. If you're wondering why I'm talking so much about the back grind as compared to what you get with Kit Carson's design, you know, and this other one, which is even greater. It doesn't give you as clean, and it starts to dig up to where you're cutting like this rather than like this when you're sliding along. So this would be the ideal angle to slide along, you know, and ride. You see that gap there? It's not lifting up the tissue to make a clean cut. Instead, you're having to go like this and kind of saw, and that's just too much of an angle. And this puts your blade in an awkward position. So, jumping off, if we're looking to classify something as survival knives, the classic butcher knife, going down to the modified butcher knives that you get here with the straight blades, the deep belly, spay type points are going to be your way to go. And these would be what I and most of the mountain men of yore would classify as a true survival knife. When you get to the fighting knives, they become very limited. Can you? Yes, it becomes uncomfortable. It creates a lot of wear and tension. There's no accounting for hours of breaking down large game or anything. You're going to suffer wrist strain. You're going to suffer hand cramps and everything else. You're going to have to take breaks, and it wears on your efficiency. When you're cutting leather, they're very inefficient at it. For clothing. And when you're cutting plant fibers, they're not great for that either. The profile geometry, edges are just not good for it. This is slightly better for the mix of the bunch, and yes, but because of the cutting angle and because of this right here, it limits the functionality of it. Like I said, for breaking down big game into quarters and bigger pieces of meat, it's fine. For caping, it's fine, except for fine detail. Real detail work would be done with a boning knife, especially if you were trying to get all that meat that's in the knuckles, in between the vertebrae, stuff like this. The boning knife is the way to go. Its flexibility is not quite as flexible as a fillet knife, and you can use a fillet knife as a boning knife. But I don't do fillet that often when I'm in the outdoors. I know a lot of the fishermen love their fillets, but I am more of a whole fish type guy, or side of a fish. Either that or I'm smoking. So, yeah. Now, if you have any questions on these, let me know. General purpose pocket knife, like I said, it gives you, the only nice thing about Victorinox and the Swiss Army type knives is the different functionalities of them, the different blades. That's their real claim to fame. But there's not really a lot you can do with these blades. These are more personal care kits than they are functional knives. Victorinox has always disappointed me. When I was a Boy Scout, my grandmother got me one, and I immediately went and got a folding knife and then built a sheath knife because my troop allowed them and was one of the last ones in New Jersey to allow sheath knives and tomahawks. But the steel on the Victorinox is mediocre. It's good for everyday little light work. It's good for cutting fishing line, stuff like that. But other than that, I don't really have, you know, the side items, the benefits like you get, the scissors, stuff like that, just never was worth it to me. The Leathermans, the Gerbers are larger. They have more functionality. They have better steel, better blades. Victorinox, the military knives, the original Swiss Army knives, not what you civilians are used to, but the actual issued Swiss Army knives were actually very good steel and had a lot of good functionality. They're expensive, hard to find, almost collector's items. Now what you get is these little multi-knives that are pretty much gimmicks. If you want something like this, you're better off going with something along a Gerber or a Leatherman. I have a lot of Gerbers from my service. Gerbers have done really well for me. Gerber's always been a friend. Leatherman's had this period in the beginning where they were of lesser quality. They've really improved. I've heard great things about them, but I'm not a Leatherman guy. On my backpack and stuff, I do carry a Gerber with my hunting stuff for weapons repair and stuff, but it isn't my general field knife. And if I had to give up all that stuff and just take one knife, like I said, it would be one of these blades here. This one isn't quite satisfactory. Like I said, the bow isn't quite as much as I want. It's got enough to be serviceable. So this will be my big game knife until I get the new one made. Really pay attention to the companies and what you're getting. Speaking of knives, knife blades, knife thicknesses, this was supposed to be CPM 3 from Bark River. This is a D2. You can see that the D2 is thinner. This is a CPM 3V, and you see that. I never wanted a knife that was quite this thick. This is almost 1/4 of an inch thick, just a hair under. And the big claim to this was for batoning. I will restate this again. If you're using your knife to baton logs into kindling, you are using the absolute wrong tool. You're needlessly endangering yourself, and you're ruining the edge on a precision instrument that is used for other things. You're using the wrong tool for the job. There is no need to baton logs that are this big for a campfire. There's plenty of limbs and high tree stuff, you know, and down trees like this one here and everything to get you firewood. You should not be batoning something like this or even this. This is hedge. You'd never want to baton this with a knife anyway. In fact, this is quite destructive to even lighter axes and stuff. It's one of the hardest woods in North America, and it's one of the hardest woods in the world. Burns extremely well, makes great handles. Difficult to work with because it does damage blades so easily. But if you're building something and you want it to last forever, or you've got the handle of something that you just never want to break, that's probably what you're going to want to use is Hedge or Osage Orange. Okay, now we're going to shift gears a little bit here. Now that we're doing camp outdoors and stuff like that, and we come to the chopping tools. Now, you've got two axes here. Both of these are felling blades. They're not splitting or nor some of the other specialty blades, race blades, or anything like that. One is the military general purpose as part of the ACE kit, which is part of the common Pioneer kit that most modern soldiers are familiar with. It has a tool pack that I have for it up there. Yes, my kids use these and I have not cleaned them up since. This one has a few chips, but the blade is still generally sharp. This is a multi-tool. For felling, this would be something up to 4 inches, maybe 6. After 6, you're just killing yourself. Sorry. I do need to clean this blade up and take some TLC. That is not actual separation. You can see here that she's there. It's just that this foam rubber has dried up and left a space. So the foam rubber needs replaced, but this thing is 30 years old. This is part of the ACE kit that goes in the Pioneer kits. It has a hoe attachment, it has a fire rake, and a bunch of other attachments that clip in here, a digging spike. This is a felling axe. Like I said, up to 6 inches, 4 inches and down is what it's most appropriate for. The TV shows and the movies and stories of Paul Bunyan, you know, and his double-bitted axe, he was not actually producing lumber with those. They were mostly doing light felling to clear areas to be able to get to the larger trees and for limbing. And that was the purpose of those axes, and the felling axes is for general purpose limbing and for felling smaller stuff that is not used for lumber. Lumber trees and everything were cut with saws, double handle saws and single handle saws, depending on the size. And this is another common felling axe. You can tell my kids got a hold of it because of the overstrike. They've torn up that overstrike guard. And then this is all sap. This isn't all rust. They did overstrike here and strike something. They've got it curled over. The blade is still sharp but needs reworked. There's a lot of pine tar on here. Most likely juniper. This would be something that is generally too big to take. That is something you take car camping with you. Stuff like that. And there's really no need to, because if you're felling a green tree, you're doing something wrong. Green trees would only be used in general construction, and they'd have to be laid out to dry. Unless you're making a temporary shelter, and even if a temporary shelter, you're not felling anything super large. You're getting small and bendy. So, something you generally more likely see in the outdoors, and we'll go from biggest to smallest here, would be the forest axe or the camp axe. This is the Holtzbrook ACA. It's got a new name. Holtzbrook redid their entire line. I bought this 4 years ago. This wasn't an impulse buy. This was a dream buy. Before this, I was using an East Wing, and I had always dreamed of having an ACA, built up the legend, and so I finally went and I bought it. And in retrospect, with age and everything else, was it a great buy? No. I do love the feel of it. I love the feel of the wood. But as far as usability and everything, the only thing I got beyond the East Wing was the ability to choke up and do some fine work with it. But does that account for the $250 difference in price? No. And probably with the places I've been and where I've done, the handle on this would have broken, like up in Alaska when I was stationed up there. The handle probably would have crystallized moisture inside and shattered at some point, where the East Wing is what I had, and it went through all of that with no problem. Survived all of that. I just recently gave that to one of my sons because I'd bought the ACA. I do love the ACA. It is comfortable. It is fun, but is it worth the money? I'd have to say no. I'd say you'd probably be better with the $51 East Wing that is the same size, the East Wing Camp X, and has a little bit better cutting profile. She comes down to here and a little bit more here. The beard comes down just a hair. So if you are going for a week or more, this is a necessity. This goes to my Pioneer kit for my hunting camps and stuff like that. I do use this to split bone and to break limbs. You do not use the back as a hammer in the traditional sense. I'm not nailing stakes or anything like that, because you do not want to use this like this and swing this up and down, because you'd be swinging it up and down at your face. So it's going to be stuff that's out here. So cracking nuts, you know, pounding plant fibers, stuff like that, you would use the hammer end more for than actual nails, or, you know, except in an emergency. So this is representative of the camp axes. For most people, I would definitely tell you to go with the East Wing rather than the ACA or the Holzbrucks or any of the other Swedish blades that are high dollar. Fantastic, they are, but not fantastic enough to warrant that huge price difference. For general purposes in the outdoors, most people go to Walmart and everywhere else to buy hatchets. I don't recommend the hatchet. I'll get to that here in a second. I recommend Tomahawk. This one I raised all my kids on. I've had this one 26 years. I bought it at Cabela's for $18 and change all those years ago. Currently goes for $29. It has a nice cutting blade. Lets you choke up on it to do some fine work right here. Unlike my daughter's Chogan, she has the sharpened back of the beard here for brush clearing, and we'll get into that. This one does not. Tommies are not just for throwing. Tommies were used by Native Americans for years and years and years to actually use as a functional tool, not just a weapon. As you can see, I was filming earlier and showing what this looks like. So I'm light striking this. That first one was heavy, and we can see that I already got down heartwood with those two blows right there, where I was able to strike, but coming across, I'm not able to with the camera right here. But we can see that 8 blows here went almost through, and this was the hatchet. Both of these were the hatchet. Well, this one was the hatchet. This one was the wilderness tool, but we'll get back to that here in a second. So Here we go. When I was a scout, I first got a East Wing hatchet. It did most things well. It was a little on the heavy side, and it didn't carry as well. And a lot of the other scouts were carrying Tommies. So I went, and eventually I was able to save up enough money and get me a Tommy, and I never looked back. I still have that East Wing hatchet. My kids have all used it until they were a little bit older, and then I let them go on the Tommy or on the Tomahawks, and most of them have gone to this Tomahawk. My daughter decided she wanted something a little different, and she ended up liking the Chogan. Now, the Chogan has some benefits, has some drawbacks. It has a smaller cutting surface. It's a little bit more compact. It's a little heavier, and it does have the hammer back to allow for some other applications. You can tell she's used this on a few things. She went ahead and sharpened the back of the beard here to go ahead and give her some brush clearing ability on the back draw. It's not great at it. I personally didn't think it was a great deal, but it does have the other abilities of being able to move logs and stuff and reposition. It splits smaller logs and stuff really well. This Tommy right here does up to 6 inches well. That'll do up to about 8 to 9 inches decently. It does split a little bit better than this one, but for all my camp purposes, this is done fantastic. In the price difference, $20 price difference. Take it, leave it. The nice thing about Tommy's is the length of the handle, giving you the extra cutting power and the extra leverage. The ability to replace the handles quickly, easily. You know, even to hand carve one out of, say, the Osage orange I've got down over here, find a straighter limb, shape it into that teardrop shape right there, and then just jam it down in, because all you need to do is, we'll go over here, and oh, there we go. And that'll come out, and you can replace it and then shape another one. And to get it on, it's tapped on now, and we're already ready to chop. So replacement is nice, handy, easy. Like I said, it gives you a little more range and distance on it. You notice we're halfway in between the hatchet and the camp axe here in length. So we have that extra room to get into tight spaces to give us a little more leverage. The other thing about the Tomahawks is the grips. You can see this, and you can see a higher end grip on the Akka. I have a size large hand, and you can see this finger touches the meat of my palm. So I have good hand grip, good hand control. This is a little bit on the smaller end for me because I cross over, but it still has good feel. It's not going to overly blister or overtax me. Whereas you get the Wally Special, the Wally World Special. You see this massive handle on it. It's overly thick, overly wide. There's not a great angle on it for giving you any cutting ability. It doesn't tip the blade forward enough. You might as well just have a straight here. And because of, although the grain is right, the shape is just awful. And the cutting head on this is awful. The profile is good for splitting. It is not good for cutting. It's slightly... I went ahead and weighed this because it says it's 1 1/4 pound on the head. And the head is not 1 1/4 pound. The head is actually heavier. She's almost 2 pounds, which is heavier even than the Atka, which is a camp axe and not a hatchet. It's a beefy piece of steel. It does not hold an edge well. One of my kids bought this to do an outing with a friend and didn't take one of the ones we already had. They forgot about it until they got there. They bought this on the way at Walmart and ended up absolutely hating it. Do they have a purpose? Do hatchets have a purpose? Yes. Like I said, I also have the East Wing. One of the kids has it. They have the camp axe, and one of the other kids has the hatchet. For me, the East Wing hatchet has stayed sheathed since I was a kid and hasn't really ever been used. I haven't been big on hatchets since I was 14 or 15. I've been running with tomahawks and camp axes for all my purposes. The tomahawks are lighter, better cutting profile than the hatchets for their size. Most of the hatchets I've run across definitely would benefit from having a much longer handle and would be more qualified and better cutters as camp axes than they would as hatchets. Anything in the size range for a hatchet would be better off in almost everybody who's tried the two side by side with the tomahawk. Hatchets are more common to find than tomahawks, which is probably why there's still a market for them. But I would say that if you're going into the woods for any reason and feeling that you're going to need some chopping, going to need to split some wood, that the tomahawk is the much better way to go. Next in this series is this guy. I saved this for last because this is the most versatile tool here, and it is the most dangerous tool here. This is a bit of an unusual piece, and I will bring this up so you can see the whole thing. So here and here, and we notice a few things. One, to anybody who knows blades, you can identify this as a discontinued item. This is called the Condor Knife and Tool Wilderness Tool. To all those that are uninitiated and those that are initiated, you can see that this actually has 360 degrees of cutting ability. You can go back here, there, and this way. That's what makes this so dangerous. It's also what makes this versatile. This edge is not razor sharp. This has a squared off edge. You can't see it real well, but it is kind of rounded off. I use this for scraping hides in the field, for doing my rough scraping. It used to have a razor sharp head that was supposed to be used as a shovel. I would never, ever, ever use this as a shovel, nor recommend it used as a shovel. I do need to touch up the blade a little bit. I got some chips here, but the curls are gone out of them. I just need to clean them up a little bit. She's a decent chopper or splitter, up to 4 inches. After 4 inches, she starts to struggle a little bit and requires an excessive amount of force. The original survival tool, I don't know what got on there, but there, wipe that off. You look like a nasty spot. The original survival tool was only a 6-inch. She was only this tall. And what you notice about this is anybody who's seen condors or owned condors is that there is a patent number here. This one does not have the patent number. This one does not have any of the condor markings. It's not even stamped condor. However, this is a condor, and this condor was custom made for me. This is the first of the 10 inches because I'm the one that recommended the 10 inch. When I was in the Army, I was doing survival courses and training, and I really liked a lot of the utility of the 6 inch, and I contacted Condor and said, hey, you know what? You get better usage out of it if it's larger. I actually cut 2 of them apart and welded them together. Don't do that. It's kind of stupid because they will break along the weld. But I was using it as a test function, and I did find out that the longer blade allows you to clear brush and use it as a woodsman's pal right here. You know, hook brush and cut it. You can do clean sweeps for grasses and stuff like that for shelter building. For finer, more intense splitting here. The fine blade down here does carving really well. Like I said, up here does well for scraping. Also debarking here. And for using as a light hatchet, this edge is fantastic. She's got just enough heft that up to 4 inches, she'll go straight through, similar to the tomahawk. She doesn't have quite the mass, so she'll tire you out a little bit more and a little bit faster than a Tommy, and definitely a lot faster than the Akka. But when you're getting low and you're down close to the ground, this is a much better option with a lot more control, especially if you're getting into the smaller stuff too. 2 inches, 1 inch, somewhere in there. This just does fantastic. And if you're trying to keep things low to the ground or keep things minimal, no obstructions, nothing really high above the surface, this is absolutely a fantastic tool. In fact, for years now, I've carried this instead of the Hawks. When I'm processing game and stuff, this has been my go-to for 16 years now. But I was going to buy a whole bunch of these, and instead I just started giving my students the name and everything and sending it to them, because a month after we built this, I got emergency orders. After they built this and sent it to me, I got emergency orders sending me downrange. And I got down there, was told that I should never have been allowed to come down because I was medically disqualified and I had a red flag due to the number of deployments and my previous injuries. So I got sent back, and then I got put in command of 2 companies. And then, yeah, they retired me. So I never did get the purchase order that I wanted of these. And they now stopped making, Condor stopped making the 10 inch, and they stopped making the 6 inch when they started making the 10 inch, but now they've stopped fabricating the 10 inch completely. Another thing that's a shame, when you put these together, this is the do-it-all-for-you package right here, except for larger stuff, and the larger stuff as far as wood felling and pioneering is done with a saw. Anything over 6 inches, you should be using a saw on, not using any choppers. But just to give you an idea, I wanted this to be a little brief, informative. There's a myriad of different steels that you could use that are fantastic. I mentioned CPM 3V because it is the gold standard for field knives. D2 is another great outdoorsman standard. The downside to it being that they do require care. CPM 3V and D2 rust, so you do need to keep them clean. You do need to keep them oiled and waxed. Stainlesses, since I was a kid, there's been a huge change in stainlesses. This is a stainless steel and has been absolutely phenomenal for years. This is S30V. And in the years I've been using, I think I've only sharpened it like 3 times. And I've butchered so many deer and elk using this and made so much jerky with this, it's not even funny. Cut up roasts. So I would highly recommend it, but its durability as an actual knife, being able to do flex and everything else, and its overall design isn't there. I strongly suggest that you do the D2, the CPM3. They now have a Crucible D2 that is supposed to be even better than the original D2 tool steel. There's a bunch, and right now we have the metallurgy to do some phenomenal steels on our blades. This is, like I said, 1930s Sologen. This was brought back from the war, from the bombed out ruins. There is some rust here. I've been a bad owner. A friend of mine put the handle on, so please excuse that. He wanted a project, and I let him project this knife, and I probably shouldn't have, because the handles that had been on it had burned off. So, but this is the granddaddy and the basis for all the old mountain men knives for the most part. Not the Bowie knife that you see. It would have been this, or a similar version made of American steel and probably a bit heavier, forged by a blacksmith, depending on if you were starting out on the East Coast or, starting in the West or the South. A lot of the mountain men that started on the East Coast actually went and got noted steels and knives that were made foreign to stuff that was blacksmith made here in the States. Whether that was due to, clout and showing off, a little bit like the Holzbrooks and the others, I can't remember its name right now, but the other Swedish steel maker. The Swedes do make fantastic steels. They make fantastic saws. The saw I carry to go along with my chopping instruments is a Sven saw using a Swedish steel blade. I have both a bone blade and two wood blades to use with it that I carry with me at all times as part of my Pioneer kit. But we'll get into that one later. But general purpose, if you're a backpacker, hiker, general camper, or fisherman, the little knives like the cold steel here, and which I highly recommend, and probably the best one you're going to get is going to be the Moras. Absolutely legendary knives for the price. I think these are running about $25 now today. This one's not that old. I think this one's 6 years old. The cold steel is 10 years old. CRKT makes a decent knife as far as the folders go. I haven't been impressed with their straight blades for a long time, not since the Vector. The Chogan, my daughter loves it. I have some problems with it. I don't like it as much as I like the more traditional, wider berth Tommy. But it is a decent blade. I know a lot of people are getting into the Norse type axes and hatchets, but for field use, the Tommies and the Native American design, especially here, is truly incredible. Like I said, I'm not keen on the sharpened inner beard. My daughter is. I do like it on the Wilderness tool for clearing, but that profile, I can't get that angle right here. But it thickens up too much. It doesn't come far enough back, and if it did, it would hinder your ability to be here and working in tight areas, you see? and that back hook. But I mean, it is great for manhandling logs and wedging, you know, to hang stuff up on. My daughter will also wedge it into a tree limb or a crook of a tree like this and hang stuff off the back. And it really keeps it from going anywhere because the toe digs in. For me, if I'm going to do that, I will just dig it in like this and put it out here, lantern, or out here like this. I'll dig it in and put the lanterns and stuff right here. I think I've gone through 3 handles with all the kids. It's been used as a chopper a lot more than it has as a thrower. Although it has been thrown quite a bit. Now, this is a brief overview on the difference between general knives purposes. Case has a series of hunting knives and stuff that are basic hunting knives that you'll run into. They'll have the drop points and stuff like that, and they will also have the skinners with the high hooks on them. That's exactly what they are. They are hunting knives. They are not survival knives. They're not general purpose field knives. And they're not particularly good at butchering. They're good at quartering. They're good at taking large pieces off, but not great for detail work. I had a bunch of them. Through the moves and stuff, I've sold them and not replaced them. But the older Case knives, if you can find them, absolutely do recommend them. A lot of hunters, fishermen, outdoorsmen have used them. I haven't found the Case knives particularly great for fishing, but, well, that's not true. Their fillet knife is really nice. But generally, their hunters are exactly that, just general purpose hunting knives. They're not great at breaking down. They're not great at butchering. Victorinox makes excellent boning knives. Like I said, I don't care too much for their Swiss Army knives anymore unless you're buying the originals or the super high dollar ones. They're kind of purposeless. The steel is not of sufficient quality and they're just flat dangerous. But their boning knives, their boning knives and their butcher knives are phenomenal. And their fillet knives. So it's not the brand, it's the steels and the quality of what they're making and how they're making it that is the problem with them. So this has been an overview of choppers and blades. A little overview, getting into all the steels and stuff that are available, their purposes, what's superior to what and how. Overall designs and stuff. Those are really in-depth conversations that if you want to have, we can get into in the comments section. More than happy to throw that out there. When you're dealing with blades and chopping tools, and heck, even saws, there's a lot to say, a lot that means a lot, and a lot that doesn't mean anything. What's important is, especially if you're spending a lot of time in the outdoors, is that you have a strong knife that is not going to fail you, you know, and can do everything you're going to need it to do. Clothe you, feed you, make what you need, and function. And I'll say this again because it is a huge pet peeve of mine, and I don't know why amateurs and bushcrafters who are hobbyists feel the need to baton logs into kindling. But if you're using a knife to baton logs into kindling, you don't belong having a knife in your hands. Because even if I was absolutely desperate on a desert island, I wouldn't be batoning logs into kindling. Batoning has specific purposes for traps, for hinges, you know, for fabrication, but you're never going to be batoning a log like this down to shims when you can just get sticks or use a Tommy. Another thing is, at some point we're going to have to talk about blade safety. That'll be another conversation, but I'll leave you with always cut away from you. When you're using a chopping instrument, never have your hands here like this and do the wacky. I was 11 years old when I learned that lesson. You can still see the scar. I'll come over and show you. I was a dumbass Boy Scout. And I recently saw it, well, a couple years ago. I don't know, right here, right across here, these two knuckles here. I don't know if you can see that or not. We'll try. My excuse was I was a dumbass kid. I watched a 40-year-old woman do it on a popular TV show. And as soon as she grabbed a hold of the log and raised the axe, I went, oh God, she's going to cut her fingers off. She's done it. And I've seen people swing between their legs while sitting, put a log here and whack and go into their thigh and their knees and their calves. You don't cut here like this. It's always out beyond the knees and the appendages. Your hand never goes past here, never goes past the handle when you're trimming or anything. Even when you're doing extremely fine work, you're going to hold up here and you're going to do it down here. It's always going to be away from you with something between you and the cutting edge so it doesn't fold over and go male or female into a very uncomfortable place. Or into your legs, which would seriously restrict your mobility, or taking off fingers. Blades, both knives and chopping instruments, tomahawks, axes, and stuff, have the same basic cut away from you mentality. If you're going to split smaller logs and stuff, you're going to grab the log here like this. You're going to put your hand on the handle and you're going to tap down on another log like this with it going lengthways with the handle. Another reason why tomahawks are a bit superior to the nice small hatchet here with the great big overly fat handle, because trying to get, you know, a 2-inch log in here and try to hold this and snap them together, a little on the dangerous side, because this is going to go flying because of its oversized handle. Again, any questions, comments, concerns, or discussions you want to have, please get a hold of me in the comment section. For this episode, that's it. We will start jumping back on the bandwagon after this series here. Sorry, after this episode. And I'm back. My health is a lot better than it was for right now, before I tank again. My physical abilities are declining. I found out that the socket in my hip is gone, in my right side, to go with my back. So I will be accelerating this a little bit faster for public dissemination. And hopefully we'll be getting a book out there too. All right. That's it for us here in Kansas. You have a great day, and I'll talk to you later.